Boom! It's 271. It's your favorite Overwatch podcast. Hopefully, maybe we're your favorite. Maybe we're not.
I'd take second or third, maybe.
Yeah, I'm cool with second or third.
Yeah.
TCP, we're back. We're here to talk about some stuff. Some of it's good, and some of it is mildly interesting. Yiska, how are
you? Coping.
Yeah, it's big Copra hours out here. Won't lie, it's bleak isn't the word I would use, but it's definitely not
this
smooth sailing.
This is like if you wanted to teach your child ignorance is bliss, then this moment is the teaching moment, because I personally think this the situation with, and of course we're hitting with the whole NetEase thing and everything, and like what do Chinese Overwatch teams do and blah blah blah. Like, depending on how little you know about this, it could feel not that bad. But also, I will confess that ignorance is bliss for me, because I feel like I don't know enough yet either. So I'm blissfully just like enjoying not knowing with certainty what's happening. Maybe it isn't as bleak, but my mind wanders. I'm not sure if you know this about me, Joe, but I'm very gifted at imagining the worst possible scenarios in every possible situation.
Oh, don't I know it? Don't I know it? It feels like every other week, once the season ends, every season, I have to talk him off, just crawling under his bed and preparing for the doomsday.
Go down memory lane? Oh no! Why are we doing this localization model? This guy's not that bad. Come on! Oh no! Why are we going to YouTube? It's not that bad. Look at the LCS viewership. It's very good on YouTube. It's not going to kill the viewership. It's all fine. Like what about hero pools though? Like, you need something fresh. Like,
hey, you never had a contempt. I didn't ever fought you on hero pools,
right?
I was right there with you. That shit was head ass.
Yeah,
but the saying that, there's that's a whole episode.
Yeah, I just completely distorted reality and made I took like two things where my overt complaining hit. Basically displaying that the clock was hit right twice a day, and conveniently left out all the times where I was just being a piss baby.
And a lot of it's not necessarily you being a piss baby. It's a lot of like the to the degrees at which you think something is bad.
Look,
is usually just like breaking the thermometer. It's so hot.
Look, basically, what I can explain to you is, I get into a tram and I look at the structural integrity of the train, and if it was to derail, where would my survival chances be maximized?
I'm gonna answer your question with a question. How much do you fucking know about trains?
I don't know, but my headcanon is super strong.
Exactly. That's episode 271. Thanks for coming in. I want to give a special shout out to our patron producers that make this show possible. One thing I want to get out there, especially early on the show, and now that I have your attention, there are ways that people can support the show. If you can't do it monetarily, that's totally fine. Downloads on Spotify, on iTunes, that's really helpful. Liking, subscribing, all that stuff. The YouTuber spiel. Just interacting with the video, letting it play is also great. So just keep in mind there. But yes, shouting out the patron producers. We have to give special thanks to Avril Vista Baby, Battle Crab, Refined Bean, Bronze Babu How, Picasso, Chris R34444, Kasha67, Lolshin, Porkchop Sammy, Rex Zane, Stuck in Bronze, and our YouTube members, Ice M Jello, William Jess, Vish Mam, Fire Limit 6, AK Chris R, Brother, Stuck in Bronze, Samuel Spaza, Adam L, and Sagi Fumi. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Yes. NetEase.
Oof.
NetEase, from my understanding, is a distributor of Activision Blizzard products in China. Now they're not. Not a good sign.
Yeah.
Not a good thing.
NetEase nuts.
It's November.
Yeah, true. Well, right. To catch people up who might have missed this piece of news, and I mean, maybe TCP is the one source for your, weekly go-to in the off-season.
Let us know in the comments.
That would be interesting feedback to know. But basically, in Chinese gaming, you need a distributor, or rather like a company that does licensing for you, because not every video game, of course, can just be imported into China. They have pretty stark regulations. And previously, I think from 2009 onward, if I'm not mistaken, NetEase did that for Blizzard Entertainment and Activision Blizzard. And now that is no longer. And while there's no definitive reasons given as to why that happened, there's ample speculation why it is, including, statements from the CEO of NetEase and whatnot. Bottom line being the following. As of this moment, there's not a way to... As of this moment, by January 2023... the license agreement runs out, by which point Overwatch 2 will no longer be accessible to Chinese audiences.
Right.
As far as we know, and once again, I will have to caveat this a ton of times, once again, ignorance is bliss, we have to assume they also can't watch, right? So...
Interesting. Okay.
Of course, if they could watch... via, streaming and whatnot and VPNs, and these hurdles just whittle down the
of course, yeah,
amount of audience you can expect. And as we found out very impressively, this audience wants to watch something they can play, right? So if they can play the game, well, they are in OnlyWatch mode, much like we were for most of season 5, and we know how that went. So as you can see, this situation opens up a wide gradient of doom, basically, right? From, they will maybe make up, and maybe by the time January rolls around, it's not going to be that bad, to maybe they can find a new distributor. But also here the background is that China actually hasn't approved any non-domestic games in a hot minute. And getting a new license deal agreement, even if they were to, get with Tencent or something,
sure,
that would all take time, and the approval process would likely just exceed, for our purposes, the start of Overwatch League Season 6, which we currently project March, something like this, right?
Yeah.
So now we're swimming, right? As a result... we had to delay the roster signing window that was set to open, I believe it was the 19th. Now it's the 2nd of December. And we don't know really what will happen to the APAC region. It was already previously interesting to me. I personally also had no idea what was actually going to happen. It wasn't a given to me that Valiant would stay in APAC. Now I'm not sure. It wasn't a given that, that we would just generally proceed as we did with that same amount of teams. Are we going to get, another migrant team for a season in there because they miraculously have partnered up with a team that has some infrastructure there and therefore can do the hosting there? That's all a possibility generally. Or were we going to find any other solutions? Then I think Halo reported that you had heard behind the scenes that they were debating playing out of Korea. Once again, this is all very shot from the hip type of solutions, depending on what the actual state of affairs is, right? There's a ton of solutions that could be feasible contingency plans, right? Some of them are very radical. Some of them are less intrusive. It comes down a lot to the financials of these Chinese organizations that were already previously pretty strained, as we saw with Chengdu, who had to cut back players last year. Charge has been on a bit of a saving spree for the last couple of seasons in comparison to the first couple of seasons they were in the league. So presumably the financials were already strained in China. Of course, they had a pandemic that hit super hard at the start of the season. Teams locked out and whatnot. That already kind of strained the situation. Now this is, depending on how impactful this is in the end, it might just be the worst news Overwatch League has ever received, right? It practically nukes the revenue opportunities for 4 teams from orbit. If it is as harsh as, is the sea home of this train? Is this going to protect me when the train falls over type of brain circuitry from that region? It could just be, it has to be devastating news. I was workshopping a satire piece this week, which went like Overwatch League hires, shaman to drive out the demon that it had been possessed by for causing a pandemic, and now this wider scandal of NetEase and inner turmoil in the company's offices, which they didn't have direct connections to and whatnot. Like, this league has, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, it's basically has been running the Titanic from iceberg to iceberg to iceberg to iceberg, and somehow it's still tumbling, right? And it's like we're still on the door, Joe. We're not letting go. We promised Leo to survive, and we will fucking do that until we're like 91 and can tell a tale about it. But I think generally speaking, I think there are contingencies, but man, has that hit hard. And once again, one has to say this is something that the league office has absolutely
this is nothing that like Spectre or Miller or anybody of like Overwatch League brass is like. They are, and I mean this in the most sincere and harmless way, they're ants to the people that, the powers that are making these decisions, right? Like they are so far in, like they're off in a side room somewhere that, operates in the realm that, is overseen by these powers that are operating these deals. They have next to nothing to do with this. If you want to be, if you want to, and we kind of talked about this prior to the show, if you want to be like frustrated, this isn't the thing to get frustrated about, especially if you're looking at it from like a team's perspective. There are plenty of things to be frustrated about regarding like information and communication, and maybe even like details of like what's going on behind the scenes and messaging that to the team so that they can do things right. Like that's maybe where you should be, keep whatever energy you may have. I don't even think that people are like all that. I don't think people are riled up about this, but it's like it's important to note that this is not an Overwatch League thing. This is like a big business decision that just has fallen through that like has implications here. It would be no different than like, the Microsoft merger going through and like it affecting the league. It has nothing to do with the league. Like this isn't like Sean Miller going out. Nope, it's time to pack up. Microsoft's here. Like, no, this has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, I think the one thing that you can say to the league in terms of like how they reacted is, I think I personally would have liked them to react a little bit quicker, even though once again, they probably also just had to inform themselves what this means, then communicate with their franchise holders what it means. But like I can tell you, because my DMs lit up at that moment. Sure. The people with roster guidance or power in the league found out at the same time as the tweet went out that the signing window was going to be delayed. I personally think, for various reasons, even without the NetEase situation, that this had to happen anyway. I think a lot of teams
anything that you can get into?
Basically, like, teams were not sure what to base their budget on. And like this uncertainty permeated the league to a large degree, unless your owner has seemingly fuck you money, right?
Sure.
So I feel like this probably helps in some ways. I'm not sure if it's enough. I keep it 100 with you. If anything,
He's 100 pilled.
this has opened the door for some tomfoolery, which we might see as soon as the window opens. Because, here's the mechanism, right?
Okay. Mechanize me.
Everyone tries to hold their cards as close to their chest as possible. Of course, it's not like nobody has perfect knowledge. Like better teams have better knowledge and
sure.
In terms of like how the market moves, what you expect, where people will spend their budget and whatnot. So, okay, let me lay out the general roster building approach as I perceive it right now. Okay. There are big spenders. Once again, we will absolutely have super teams. But there's also the trend of teams maybe, giving one or two players big salary and then filling up with the rest.
Okay.
Where we could maybe see moving into a bit of a star player culture, much like the NBA would have, right? Where it's enforced by a salary cap. For us, it's poverty.
Correct.
And I had to. It's not fair, but yeah.
No, it's not, but it is funny. It is true.
Right. And basically, in terms of teams that I have seen, and that doesn't mean it has been an exhaustive list, right? Keep in mind, I'm not as well connected in APAC, and like I don't have perfect knowledge either. But so far, I've seen about 8 teams make some serious offer somewhere. Okay, just to give you a bit of the background of the situation currently of the season. So, now this news rolls around. A lot of teams they were ready, dude. They were like, I got my contracts, everything's drafted up, I got the lawyers, I got the players to agree. Once that clock dings, I'm gonna have 4 or 5 players signed, and I can chill for the rest of the year. Okay. Now this news hit, and suddenly, of course, the Chinese teams cannot be assured of what they can do, right? Maybe they have to very soon go into big time savings mode, and therefore they allowed a lot of their players to enter unrestricted free agency. Now, from my understanding, there's not a clear definition as to how teams interpret what unrestricted or restricted free agency means. Unrestricted free agency is, of course, I have no bounds to the team, I don't have a buyout, you can pick me up, blah, blah, blah. Okay, easy. Restricted free agency implies that the player still has a contract. By this time, this contract would have to be renewed, because otherwise the player would now be a free agent because the contract end date is already over, right? So, but restricted free agent, what is the purpose of you announcing that if otherwise, by definition, everyone always who's signed is a free agent, a restricted free agent. That would be a term that it's just ambiguous and not needed.
Yeah.
Right. So I think what it implies is the following 2 things. And this is how I have seen it interpreted by teams and players.
Okay.
The more common is that you can directly talk to the player. And that's a big advantage because then you're not giving away your hand as much, right? Unless the player that's still signed to you talks to you. But you can directly talk to the player, which theoretically is an information advantage, right? The alternative that I've seen is that teams assume that this player won't come with a buyout or with a very low buyout, where the teams now have considered that it's in their best interest to get a little bit or, just to get rid of the contract that so they don't have to pay the severance or whatever it is, right? It could be many things as to why someone would do something like this. Okay, so this happens, and a bunch of those Chinese and Seoul and all those people go into the unrestricted free agency. Suddenly, those teams with money, their money goes a way longer way now.
Sure.
The market is now flooded with S-tier agents that want some security and want to see what's out there, right? Their orgs can't reasonably promise them even to be remotely close to the old salaries, right? And therefore, that might have just caused, reshuffle in some echelons of the league in terms of like, okay, I had my team, and now I see that my money can go a lot further because I can get Smurf, and then me getting Smurf means that I'm not getting this player, so this player is available to the market, and the market decides this player is better than the player they have, and domino from here, right? So this, still has some time to play out. I think this will have meaningful impact on the league in terms of how some people build their rosters. I know it for a fact for a couple of teams already that at least the additional waiting time, I can't really put it down to the China situation, but the additional waiting time and the additional consideration and, more information coming in, that teams don't feel as pressed to make the first move. But still, of course, a lot of them already have their stuff figured out as well, right? So, I think this will fundamentally, or this decision has fundamentally changed how transfer markets operate. I would argue, and this, excuse me, GMs, but I think this should probably be delayed further. I don't think by December 2nd you have a salient solution that allows people to come up with a budget. If you do, then fair enough. Then you should probably allow teams. You would probably have to communicate what you have already by now because they need to negotiate and get it to discussions with the players and whatnot, and basically like everything has to fall into place, and then you can open the window in order to not make it too chaotic.
Let me poke you there. Why is it that you think the league wanted to start as quick as possible? Is that like a false positive for me that I'm reading a little too much into the lack of communication, how much this delay has both helped or maybe even was necessary, and maybe even further delays are needed? Why do you think the league needs to get out in front right now? Why do you think they just need to start
in terms of the window? Getting the window up as quick as possible, or
yes, I would say that they're both kind of tied. No, the further delayed the window is, the further delayed your season start probably should be, right?
Maybe, maybe not.
You see what I'm saying? If we agree at least at some point that those two are tied, then why does it feel like we're rushing this when things are not very clear at all for anybody?
So, one thing I think that needs to happen is the league start happening at a time where it's opportune in line with the game development, which probably is the release of the third hero.
Yeah.
After launch. The season 4 hero. I think that needs to happen. I think that almost trumps all other needs. Because the alternative is to start mid of season 4 or later even in season 5. What are you getting there? Do you have anything exciting there? Then it also shoves out everything else. Then you're maybe not getting, the next hero after that into this, whatever it is, right? I think, generally speaking, probably goal 1 is to start the league on time and make concessions along the way to facilitate that. I would think that is the priority structure, even though I can't speak with authority on that. It just seems everything else is more trouble. If you can help it, maybe you can't help it. It's if there's too much uncertainty, or if they tell you, we'll fix the the China situation by June, maybe you could be moved, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's the reason why they only delayed it so little is because of, like, currently if those teams don't see value in having the player around, they might drop a bunch of players just because like everyone's just sitting on their hands, right? You can't really practice with a squad that's not been reassembled. It's also just the thing you do naturally after at the start of an off season. If they were to say, like, let's move that signing window into January already, I'm not sure if that. Yeah, I think it's hard to think about the externalities, right? Like, about that.
Even if we ignore the NetEase situation entirely and we just look at the fact that even what you're saying, that like you think it should have been delayed regarding any kind of like budgetary information or any kind of like delays in, like, let's say media rights sponsorship. Or media rights deals or sponsorships or anything like regarding like the like monetary or financial health of the league.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that's already a worry and causing you to like sit here and tell me that like we should probably delay, like,
yeah, I
why
see your
aren't
point.
we?
I think we're I think I thought you were going to put it the other way. I think this is a salient solution where you probably also have ample incentive to move quickly and not give people too much time to consider things.
Okay.
I think just to keep the ball rolling, have everyone lined up in the process, workshop improvements, what can be done. And yeah, like the stresses, once again, by the way, this would be the next thing that the demon summoned is a recession, the global recession, of course. This is also another thing that the Overwatch League has to work through. And dropping ad rates and whatnot, and also like a fundamental change in esports at large and how it can be monetized, and having to reinvent monetization on the fly as well is a major problem. With broadcasting deals probably not being the revenue stream of the future.
Even feasible, yeah.
It's you once again like now have to refer to the dev design, and this is, I recommend this actually. It was by GamesBeat, I think. Sorry if I mispronounced the publication's title, but they did a conference, and among those at the conference was one guy from FaZe, one guy from Vindex, and one guy from Genji, which you guys know as Arnold, a friend of the show, and has been on the show before, and hater of Joe for throwing profit on the bus.
Rightfully so, to be fair.
Right. But yeah, and basically Arnold said, like, for him, this is the end of broadcasting deal esports revenue streams, right? And I could see how, I mean, this is probably true for a majority of broadcasting at large. Like, we've heard how atrocious the Twitch deals are now for streamers, even, right? That don't get the bag anymore, right? To the same degree. So those upfront, like, give me cash, so I'm loyal to you type of deals, they are on their way out, right? You now have choice of your product. Maybe you can want a multi-product, but like you basically got to make your paper in other ways and monetize and come up with solutions. And there, unfortunately, the best system we currently have in esports is through the developer, and the developer rightfully says, mine, right?
Yeah.
So the interesting part was then for them to basically flesh out that every business is now more than just an esports business. So no.
Oh, yeah.
You know, some are apparel companies, some are, you know, school programs. Basically funding into a consultancy system is a possibility, right? So you cannot just be a sports team type of esports organization anymore. You gotta have your revenue streams diversified and use your economic energy that you're generating through the attention that you're getting through the esport into monetizing in other ways, right? And there it is far from solved, right? But yeah, this is you can't. Like, there, the league has to figure something out. One very good way would just be through skins. A lot of people believe. I think this is the problem. Is probably the bottleneck in work hours. Team 4 can reasonably give to it while they're still having to ship PvE, which is a huge one for Overwatch 2. It's a proprietary software system. It's not like you can just hire more artists and expect them to be productive from day one. You need to give them a senior artist that then has to learn them, which further delays your product as the senior artist is bogged down with educating, your Zoomer that should be tasked to make dope skins for your esports team that might or might not align with your artistic vision for Overwatch. And then you're negotiating between dope stuff and whatnot. So I think we will just have to figure out as esports what we're good at. I think things that esports are good at is esports organizations are very agile, and they are quicker than developers to be able to get into the current trends of the internet. One thing where they've done that is with social media managers, where they got social media manager brands, and some of them did it very well, and they can react to the current memosphere, if you want, and just get someone. But the problem is this doesn't align with corporate culture. If I find a funny meme, for Winston Overwatch and want to put that in a skin, right? So you send that to, you come up with this skin, then you send that to someone at Blizzard. They send it to Blizzard Legal. There it is on a table of like a pile of, paper that they're way overworked on and sits there for 6 months. And by the time, nothing is older than the meme of yesterday, as the kids say nowadays. So
I think all the kids say that for sure. TikTok says it constantly.
We just gotta solve this current era of media and gotta tag on something else to this esports economic energy, because here's the hopium from that panel as well. A lot of them were doomers, and also I would say Arnold self-professed to be a bit of a doomer on this situation, but bottom line is that esports viewership still goes up year over year, right? And that's something to believe in, and there's that growth is something to be mindful of. I will also say, of course, friend of the show, Juked, Casores this week, and I saw the interview on Visionaries, Jacob Wolf's podcast, by the way, highly recommended. And he basically talked about how esports is kind of a boogie word now in VC cycles.
I can imagine, yeah.
It's
that's the big Damocles sword, right? Where it's just kind of looming over us. The expectation is that they give us the money, us being just esports at large, and eventually they see a return somewhere. Are they ever going to see that return? Is it ever coming? Nobody knows. And it feels like the way that it sounds like that business that panel went is that yes, viewership climbs year over year, but it's not necessarily from the same platforms or the same games, right? It really comes down to at the solutions level. It feels like the teams have to be the one to create solutions because the developers come and go. Very, very seldom are you producing a new boat to this storm that is esports, and by boat I mean team or franchise or organization that is able to sustain itself for any amount of time in the chaos that is this space. There's one tropical storm could be League of Legends, one tropical storm could be Overwatch or Rocket League or whatever. Some of them are persisting, most of them probably won't, right? So the only thing that's persisting is what you can control, and it feels like the solutions have to be developed from within the teams, right? And I feel like that's where you're seeing the apparel, the like you said, the consultants, even people getting even more creative with I won't go out on a limb, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of very creative ways that teams are going to also diversify. That isn't just oh, we're doing merch, or we're doing X, or we're doing, media. I think people are going to get real crazy with it because drastic times and the measures that come with it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's really hard. There are no easy solutions. It's not like we're inclined to pay for, viewing that league product. We just go elsewhere for our entertainment. Like, internet has been free for our generation. It's not like we have massive amounts of recreational income where you just can splooge that on that, right? Like, it's bad. But I think it's also just trying to figure out what works. And we're up against a ton of dopamine ejecting stuff nowadays. We have the good shit, but basically, like, we're trying to sell candy against what's this Colombian drug lord? The joke is dead. I killed the joke.
Escobar.
Escobar. There you go. Okay. We're trying to sell candy against Escobar. That was going to be the joke, which could have been funny if I was any more quick-witted.
It's true. How much do you attribute that to being German?
A lot, because it's fairly late after a 12-hour day today.
I think that's more than fair. Speaking of the NetEase situation, obviously, it's not a good thing, but it only progressively gets worse when everybody remembers that the Shanghai Dragons are owned and operated by NetEase. So, surprise, surprise, Moon being a free agent, coach of the year, 2021? Is that Moon or is that Rush? I can't remember. Yeah, not a good sign.
Dude.
Not a good thing. Extra bad.
Yeah. I mean, all the signs on the horizon are not great, right? Like, there's on the one team I hand, okay, like you gotta contextualize the Dallas situation as to, a bunch of their players actually got off their contract.
Sure.
So then
their
they
were just expiring.
Right. Then they let the rest also explore a different vision. If they find it to be the best solution for everyone to come back together, that might happen. It might not. So it's not directly like a death rattle sound of like, oh no, the champions are disbanding because they can't afford the salaries or whatever, or the salary raises or whatever. I think while that they can't probably, I don't think you can make the business case that those guys should have their or hold their salaries that they had previously into next season, given the context of the entire league. And maybe that I will end up eating my words depending on how the offseason goes, as it so often does. But I think, like, the Shanghai news, of course, cuts deep. But also, this team, once again, was also always going to be, fundamentally changing.
Without a doubt.
I don't think, like, letting go of Moon is that big of a problem. Would have happened if there was everything above bar in terms of the licensing agreement? Maybe not.
You would have to say no, right?
Will someone like Moon find a new job? Yes. So,
yeah. Without a doubt, I think Moon has people in his mentions, trying to recruit him. That I'm not necessarily afraid of. It's just another team that I think we're rightfully excited to see what happens with, the evolution, the third, maybe final evolution of the Shanghai Dragons, going from 0-40 to rebuilding to, actively winning in 2021 to, another rebuilding phase. And what does that look like under Moon again? I have to assume this is again, wild speculation. This probably was more a direct result of the NetEase partnership being, dropped.
Yeah.
Which sucks. Because, and we kind of talked about this in the Discord, which, now that I have your attention, somewhere in the show notes, I believe there is a link to the Discord. Really awesome community. Come hang out. We talk about all kinds of stuff. Most of the time it's just video games and memes. But come join us as we discuss why NetEase losing a large media deal probably hurts their stock. And if it hurts their stock in the how would you say, like the crosshairs of a possible recession, maybe we don't spend a ton of money trying to rebuild our Overwatch League team, right?
Yeah.
It's just another team that's probably going to be a budget kind of buy year for them. Maybe it is, maybe no, it's not. But I have to assume with everything that's been laid out in front of me, like with this deal being dropped, it can't be a confidence booster for you, right?
No, but no, for sure not. I just think like the ways of monetizing in China are vast and mysterious. So
okay.
So I don't know how it would impact. I assume like it can't be good not being able to reach your own audience because it's literally illegal to stream your game. But yeah,
well, it's illegal to play the game. Doesn't mean it's illegal to watch it. I'm
not sure. I think that's
it is interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's again where like here's a little how the sausage is made. We're not, shocking that a, mostly middle-aged German and a very dumb American are not authorities on Chinese business. Yeah. Don't know how this works. What can we really say about this other than it sucks?
I tried
it's not a good thing.
I tried to get a clue today, Joe. Man, I only got got very sad replies today.
Isn't that McKenna quote with the campfires where like when you expand your surface area of knowledge is like a campfire, and if you expand your surface area of it in like the darkness, that you only get more confused.
Yeah,
like things become more like incoherent and all over the place. Maybe that's a McKenna quote. I'm not sure. Maybe it's some other space cadet, but yeah, Shanghai can't be in a good state with this. Moon obviously gone. I think the only other player left is Lip. Am I correct in saying that? Under contract officially?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Is there any world where, or is, how do I say this? Like, is it a like not a stopgap, but like an omen if Lip were to leave? Like, does that kind of make you more readily or reticent to pull the trigger to say, okay, Shanghai is like painting themselves in a corner. They've let Lip go, hypothetically. And
even then,
what do we do now?
Even then, no. Like, if they get a bag and have the desire to just have a clean slate, like,
okay,
why not? Like, I don't think that necessarily dooms it yet. Yes,
okay,
and but like, this is the worst season trend. I blame packing, even though packing didn't start it. But packing definitely kept it alive long enough after it already wasn't cool anymore. And then it sustained it through packing. Basically, like the pathogen was carried by packing into the now. So we're now getting ice again.
Interesting.
He's basically the mammoth being frozen in the Arctis. And then as he re-emerged on Twitter, he brought it back and now everyone's fucking infected.
I need YouTube comments to tell me, and maybe, some Spotify or Apple iTunes listeners can weigh in on this. Is this just an Overwatch thing, or do like esports in general like do eyes in the off season? I feel like it might just be us, like with the density. I feel like maybe some other like teams in the off season might do this and like other esports, but I feel like we just do it like all the time, and it's most of the time it's mostly just baiting. Like I think I saw McGravy like tweet under somebody recently, or I think it was another player we'll get to later on in the show, about like how like doing like the emoji like, oh, palm tree to explosion bomb, it's trying to make it sound like they're coming to mayhem. It feels very like we have a big like off-season culture.
For all we know, these eyes could just mean to Lip that he and his girlfriend were in the Darks Theater watching Contenders, right? Like, that could also just be the meaning of that tweet. Because I think right around that time, weren't they seen on broadcast?
I don't know.
Contenders? I mean, see, like, if you read Reddit, you would know.
I don't.
See? Once again,
I'm better off for it. Thank you.
Imagine wanting to protect your mental health. Couldn't be me.
Well, here we are. Leave in the comments below who you think.
There you go.
Okay.
See it on the
screen?
screen?
Fabulous.
Right?
That's amazing. I'm enriched.
That's double
knowing
eyes.
this.
That's double eyes. I don't know about you, but
That's 2 sets of eyes.
yeah.
Eyes realize, you know? Shout out. I think that was Jaden Smith. Anyways. Yeah. Shanghai, NetEase, not a good situation. Hopefully we can look forward to them building another, competitive team with whatever APAC even looks like. Speaking of APAC, the Seoul Dynasty announcing quite a bit. I think last show we had maybe talked a little bit about some of their offseason moves, but I believe in the interim, Prophet announced, speaking of restricted free agents, that he was, testing the market when it comes to restrictive free agency. And that is a pretty big piece on the table that maybe wasn't there before. So where do you kind of sit with that? Is that a doomer sign, especially with some of the things that you heard Arnold say?
In terms of, I mean, that was already, I think this was decided before, right?
Okay.
And some of the news we already got beforehand. Maybe not the extent of which is the same, but like,
Sure.
I also could see how the China situation with some players leaving could if, let's say, Lib leaves somewhere, that might attract other players wanting to join, and therefore, like, maybe these players also want to join up. So that creates a desire in those players to go elsewhere and find their luck there. And Seoul is not really opposed to offloading like a shitload of salary, because let's be honest, like, you're unlikely to make it back next year. So I don't know. Like, it's currently just not very opportunistic in the short term.
Sure.
To have like league winning teams, unless you already have an established system to monetize this, of which we have very few teams, with Shock being one of the teams that are very good at it.
Mm-hmm. And I think it seems like Arnold kind of agrees with a post to which I can only assume probably came from the Genji Discord. He's quoted in saying, "Once free agency is over, I'll make sure to spend time talking through our decision process. Right now, there's just too much uncertainty about what the APAC League will look like that makes it difficult to invest like we normally do. Giving players the opportunity to test free agency and getting the most money is the right thing to do, especially in a market where so many teams are cutting back. One last thing I'd like to say is that this has nothing to do with the people that run OWL. This is much bigger than the folks over there who are probably just as surprised as we were. APAC without China just doesn't make much sense for OWL," end quote. Especially that first paragraph, I think is very telling. That it seems like maybe this deal with NetEase kind of falling through, or maybe there was rumblings of that earlier on. That it sounds like, the key word here, makes it difficult to invest like we normally do, seems to me to point in a direction of budget restrictions. No, is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think so.
I would tend to read that way, which again, kind of looping back to like the Shanghai discussion, it's just another team that we kind of hoped was going to be this, all-star cast that should be competing for a title that like is coming off of like a very promising season with a lot of promising players. Now you have who I think we both consider one of the greatest players, if not the greatest player of all time, in Prophet, testing out restricted free agency, and your C-level executive coming out and saying, "Hey, it's really hard to invest like we used to." Not a great sign. But what I do think, while speculation time, you want to talk about solutions, I think it would be a great time to come back with an Apex callback. Let's see a Seoul Dynasty recolor fourth jersey style with the runaway colors to embrace the budgetary restrictions.
Yeah.
A runaway Seoul Dynasty collab, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody would care at this point, but I think that would be very funny.
Probably not.
Some grandma sweaters for the Dynasty boys.
Those were great, yeah. Yeah.
Or something.
I mean, man, there's
Stuff. It sucks.
some good news, please. I'd like to order one good news, please.
No news November. It can't end soon enough. Not for the reasons you might think. So yeah, Seoul's out of the way. Moving on, coming a little bit closer to home. Atlanta has been making some moves even as of the start of the show. Not only has Sephi moved to a remote analyst position and Gator stepped in as head coach, but also Kai has been cut from the team. Or cut is a strong word, but they have parted ways with Kai.
Yeah.
You get first crack at this. What does this mean for this team? I feel like Sephi has kind of had a very distinct roster building style, and now that Atlanta has, now that he's not necessarily in a position of power in that way, do you think that changes for Atlanta?
I think it's probably a good idea if you're taking over the reins, pun intended.
Very punny.
Then you want to probably do the things that you wish your former head coach had done. I will also straight up tell you, Gator, in the form he has existed in the Atlanta reign, has de facto been a coach for a long time. Right? And that extends, I would say, past this season. I think he already had a pretty high impact on them culturally and like strategically going back into 2021.
Okay.
And I think it's also a move that doesn't surprise me too much. I think that makes complete sense from what I know about them. The Kai dropping does surprise me, but we don't know really the reason as to why Kai was dropped here. So, or why they parted ways, dropped. Like maybe Kai wanted out, or maybe they had a better offer somewhere there. It wouldn't surprise me if this, like, Happy being dropped by Glads was already strange to me. Maybe this is just like the most obvious call in the world that Kai is Glads bound.
Okay.
Kevstar Kai plus X would go hard, if I'm being honest.
Sure, yeah.
I think the interesting part is if I am Gator.
You are not, but go ahead.
Me when I'm Gator.
You knocked that out of the park.
one episode, at least one. So if I'm Gator and someone hands me the roster, I probably would take a roster that speaks my language. I
would have to assume, right?
But like,
when I'm English,
if I'm Gator, I also wanted a roster that can win the league, and given the competition, and also frankly that a lot of the best West End players are already off the market. You probably are running out of options. Now, how heavily do you lean into from the roster from the hybrid? Honestly, like with people like someone on the market,
is it that crazy? I
people have like. I think this is almost like Hawk slander, but I think someone would be an upgrade, and.
I don't think that's crazy.
I also maybe they already have a good chemistry, and maybe they just want to build on that, and that's fine. I think it really messed with them that they didn't have a main tank last year.
Yeah,
even though I'm semi-confident that Hawk can probably do a lot about his main tank pool this year in the run-up to the league. I hope he's doing nothing but grinding right now. But letting go of possibly the second best Western player. Am I bullshitting? Kevstar and then
player?
Kai.
Best Western player?
Am I wrong?
I gotta think about that one. I think he's good, but I don't know if the second best is where I'd throw that.
I mean, for one, he was an MVP candidate, right?
It's true.
And he was one of 3
that I guess my question is like define best. Like valuable or just like purely talented?
Okay. I'm being fed confidential information, which actually isn't confidential because it's being posted on the ATL Discord. But
okay. Yeah, when you have somebody like if we're defining best as valuable, I feel like somebody like Reiner, I feel like Hadi, there are players that do have a lot of value, right? But maybe they're the best. But what is this?
Yeah, it's basically confirming that Atlanta isn't going budget. I can tell you guys from my information that is true.
Okay.
That Gator is a good fit for the role and is a great leader. Once again, that's not too surprising. And then that he doesn't have too much information, but that he thinks they will be a good team. And I think, yeah, that's probably true. But bottom line, to get to my point.
Yes.
Western coach, rookie here, comes in. Let's go off, let's say, top 3 Western talent. Interesting move.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point.
Yeah, no, what 100% is. It's somebody who I believe they activated their,
Yeah. They he was on an existing contract. His contract was extended, +1, and of course, like now you can. I mean, maybe he was bought out. We wouldn't know.
Possible.
That's by the way possible at this point. They could have already transferred.
And we're just hearing.
He could have a contract somewhere. But yeah, it's an interesting situation for sure. And if he says they are still going to be a good team and not going budget, this might just be one of those teams that I talked about earlier that are now seeing that are high budget, that are now seeing a market like lapse in terms of, or like a market inflation in terms of how good the talent you can get for your buck. Like if suddenly like Lip Profit, like Chorong, you have Vigilante already. That's probably the best flex support you can get, other than Shu. And you're not side grading from Shu. I'm sorry. I think Vigilante, probably a little bit, you're not going through the hassle of getting a new player, so Vigilante is fine. Like, if all these players are on the market and you have the budget, why hell not, dude? Like, you want to win. If I already made it to a final and, like, was so outclassed that I had to chuckle about it, like, this sits in my heart, and it's a thirst and wound that can only be healed by winning it.
I agree, but I don't know that you need to look too far to have a team that could at least repeat the success that same Atlanta team did, right? We talked about it last show. I feel like the former Redbirds, American Tornado, like core is out there in the ether. You have a Western coach that, again, feels very loose, maybe in the style.
You're not
maybe
winning the league with him.
I don't, especially with how much we're talking about budgetary restrictions and just like people buying up good to players to throw on team to make a good team. I have a hard time believing that they could not at least repeat the same kind of success.
Yeah, but
I don't know if you're winning.
What if you can win? Who's a great team right now? Who's solid? Who has their shit together already?
Nobody. So to say that they couldn't win with that statement being like viewed as fact, I don't know. I think that's cooked. I think you very easily could win. I think that there's going to, and I said this last show, and I know it was like very general, but like there are going to be teams that like see this NetEase stuff and see the chaos that's in APAC. And they're going to be plucking, we have such all-star. They're going to be playing Fantasy Manager, and they're going to throw it together like a fat kid throws together chocolate cake, peppermint, Pepto-Bismol, and oregano, and like, oh, look at these 4 things. I love them so much as they stand alone, but together they make an absolute clusterfuck of diarrhea, right? Like, it's just not how you cook.
Maybe. I still remain that it works enough of the time.
It works enough of the time, but if you aren't winning, then did it work? Is that workable?
I mean, it depends on the circumstances, right? To pull a little bit the curtain on this discussion, Joe and I discussed this prior to podcast, and I basically said, like, you could maybe think of a team like Glads as a super team, even though you probably could have updated your. No. Like, how I define a super team is you have a top 3 player in each specific role on your team. I think if Glads doesn't fit that definition, they're at least close.
Very.
And the question is, I said then, like, it has been a while since a super team failed. I think there's no world where you can say Glads failed in anything else but, like, winning the league in a absolute Mickey Mouse applied patch that basically invalidated whatever happened there. No, I'm sorry. Like, I'm just going to shit all over feelings for it.
You're not going to hear any rebuttal when it comes to playoff patches, right? 100% there. And I'm not going to go too deep on, like, the Glads thing, but, like, I think this has been proven in traditional sports, at least to some degree. I think this has been proven in other esports to some degree, that you can't just go fantasy manager mode. There has to be at least some respect given to, like, the.
I think the reason why it didn't work is because everyone else keeps buying your key pieces. But if you're the guy that is on a Manhattan salary that walks into, I don't know, some Southeast Asian country where the buying power is much lower, and you just go like, oh, this is funny money you're paying. Well, how much is it? Yes, like, I just breathed and made more. It's like, if that is the context of how far your money takes you, then I think if you can get your first picks on every single role,
sure.
Which not even the Shock, not even the Glads, not even the Shanghai Dragons, those guys never get it done. They always have someone that is suboptimal, other than maybe the Shanghai Dragons, that was probably the most perfect team of all time. And also had a D roster, and even there, you can't tell me you couldn't have upgraded.
I actually so agree. Well, the most perfect team of all time.
You could have upgraded Bebe, but
yeah, I think Shock of, like, 2020 might have an argument there. No,
did they have a second flex?
I mean, how many? The second flex support?
Yeah.
I think 2020 is probably the most.
Roscoe's a based answer. Maybe, yeah. I don't hate that. Yeah.
I think, like, they have some holes in DPS that they probably could upgrade, especially in 2020. But I feel like I don't hate Shanghai. I think that's gotta be a good shout. But I don't know. Yeah, I think there are some historically overperforming teams that have some, like, real suspect solutions and suspect players on them that probably shouldn't be there, that end up finding success. And I think that only speaks to, like, the whole super team being a bad look. Let me pose this to you. I know that you probably are a little bit more familiar with the budgetary, allocation that some of these teams have. If you look at name removed, if you look at the Glads budget in total that they spent this year, and you look at them getting bronze, is that something that you'd be okay with?
Bronze where?
Just season placement.
Season placement with the budget that they have?
With the budget that they spent this year.
I mean, they did get third, right?
That's what I'm saying.
But they also
is third, like, warranted with that budget.
Yeah, I think also given their circumstances, it's reasonable. I think Shock just because they had a probably lower salary total. Doesn't necessarily mean they didn't have to pay elsewhere, or this isn't like
this wasn't like
long,
established. Like
long,
where there wasn't value that was built.
Long hours. That's, by the way, while we're on the topic of Atlanta, this is one thing that Gator definitely has to get on top of, which is that I've talked about with Casores as well, is the best coaches in the league develop talent funnels towards their teams. And look no further than Brad in this.
Without a
Brad
doubt.
is one of the best roster builders of all time. I know you love to hate on the guy for no reason, but like the way he was consistently able to attract some of the best ever Overwatch talent into his teams and run a franchise really successfully, if you look at it, for
totally successful. I don't think people give Atlanta and Brad enough credit in that way.
Yeah, you gotta just give the guy his laurels there. He's one of the best coaches to ever do it. Top 3, maybe not. Top 5, most definitely. But I'm saying not top 3 because now we have 3 coaches that have won the Overwatch League with definitive like long term. And then even you would have to put Changun in there, but like in my mind, it's like Krusty, Rush, Moon, Brad. Am I about to say Changun, dude? I might have to. I don't wanna, but I might have to. You think you're making me?
Odd season.
You're making me. I mean, the guy still always has some goofy shit. Up his sleeve, but. Yeah, Eric is saying Ray.
That's a tough one. I would argue that, but that's a tough one to argue. That's really hard.
All-time Overwatch, maybe if you take it into account, also miraculous youngsters and whatnot.
But even then, it's just so far out. And like, he had like the good season with like Chengdu.
Win a season, then we talk.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough to argue. I think. I agree, but that one's spicy for I think general audiences to want to swallow.
Yeah.
But I mean, to your point with Atlanta, to kind of circle back to that, like, is there not a realm where Brad can still be that as like this remote position that he's kind of situating himself in? Like, analyst is a very much like other front office titles, very nebulous in terms of like what you're actually doing. Is he not, is he not just maybe moving into like a backroom role where he can build the team and, work with Gator in that way, or at least scout talent? That's another thing that Brad is exceptional at, is specifically scouting DPS talent. I would say, like, the players that he would pull, that like he would, kind of pick out of the rough and like make decisions on. Again, you don't have to look too terribly far to see, it going into fruition with Venom and stuff. But throughout his history, going back to Selfless, again, like season 1 Shock, like, you want to talk about like ballsy and gutsy moves. I don't think the Shock is necessarily set up for success if he doesn't take a gamble on a bunch of kids who are underage or very, very talented, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, if that's something that he still feels comfortable doing, if that's something he even wants to do, I feel like Atlanta probably still has that within them. The big question is, does the culture change? Do they go mixed, or obviously they are mixed, but it feels to me that this would be an easy home for a lot of like the Western, the big AT core that's just out there, this big Western presence that like maybe doesn't necessarily wants to compete together, but like would make sense for them to. And you have an open Western invitation. It feels like Atlanta would be, knocking on that door pretty readily. No.
Yeah. I mean, but it depends which direction Atlanta takes.
Sure.
Like, another thing that we have to point out is that Gator kind of made tabula rasa with coaching, and I'm interested where this is going. I know, like, we talked about like the pay being like a guy that trialed with them. I could also see that you probably want more Korean coaches if you're keeping Vigilante, and like apparently are like, if you let Kai go, you probably need someone on Hitscan lined up that is a side or upgrades, dare I say.
Some Korean talent out there for sure.
That's Korean talent, yeah. That implies Korean talent. So you probably want a coach to support that, or maybe even the manager and whatnot, translator.
Sure. Yeah.
And that costs money. So yeah, I don't know. Like there are theoretically a bunch of things implied by the actions taken currently by ATL, but maybe they're also just letting people move on with the same type of like premise. Like maybe Kai got a better deal somewhere. It would surprise me, but like it's possible. So yeah, maybe we'll figure it out soon enough. If I had to say, and I don't know at this point because this news just dropped and I didn't know about this before, but like I think given that Glad's dropped Happy, I wouldn't be surprised if Glad's was looking at Kai at this point.
Sure. I mean, that makes sense to me. It feels more like a side grade. I don't think that Happy has much. How to say this without being too mean? Like, feels like very shallow, but very good at what he is very good at, right? Like, Happy is still a stud when it comes to like mid long range hit scan, but like you don't really want him on much else, right? I think we saw that with Houston. We saw that this year with Glads. Like there was some difficulty trying to get him to live up to those expectations on heroes that weren't like Widow, Ashe, maybe a Hanzo. Like it's difficult. It's hard. Kai in that same realm feels like a very like similar fit.
Those guys all need to involve. I'm telling you straight up. Like Ans couldn't get by like on his hero pool. I think Kai's hero pool was exposed at times this season.
I dare I say
Happy's hero pool as well.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. For like their career longevity, they probably should evolve. But if we're looking at Overwatch 2 and we're saying how lethal it is, and we're looking at like the demands of the DPS like roster, and like if there is a Widow meta, if there's an Ashe meta, if there's a Sojourn meta, I need a stud that can play this hero like nobody else, much like a Tracer specialist, right? I think there are some very niche specialist roles that operate as like third string DPS talent as a role player effectively. And I feel like I've talked about this a little bit. Like hit scan specialists as a role player, I think will probably always be a thing. Will they be guaranteed starting time? No. Will you want one? If you can afford it, probably. Much like a Tracer player, right? Like if I'm missing a Tracer, like a good Tracer player, and there's a hard Tracer meta come up, I'd love to sign, a Venom, a Striker, somebody that can just take over the hero and just play it and be that role player for me. And I think more often than not, you're going to see Hitscan become that within Overwatch 2. You probably will still see that with Tracer, but I think the way that like Overwatch 2 is being designed with the removal of the tank, with the removal of CC, how good Sojourn is and how good probably a replacement is looming to be. Whether it be Ashe, whether it be a hero that we don't even know about yet, right? Like, I don't think these players are going anywhere, so I don't know if they have to evolve. I think they probably should, but I don't know if like the specialist in this category in the game that we currently have is necessarily a bad thing just yet.
Yeah.
You probably need some depth as a team, right? Like Kevster Happy was already sparse, right? Like even looking at Glad's first foray with Patty, Kevster, and Ons, it was like, okay, that makes sense. But there was like tertiary stuff that was, in the wind. I think like that's the formula moving forward, is that you have your hyperflex, you have your role player, and you have just like an everyman second player that is going to be a threat on some heroes, can feasibly just kind of.
Or you just have a beast. Upkeep. You just have Lip. You can just have Lip. That's apparently allowed in the Overwatch League. I know that it shouldn't
apparently.
Be. But like you can. And I think they're also like Lip-esque players now more and more. Hot take.
Mm-hmm.
You ready? I think Stalker could get there.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, not gonna reference the unaired rookie draft, but I fleeced Stalker in a double flex play, right? Like I took Alpha E and Stalker, knowing that this kid is, nearing hyperflex here. If I can have 2 hyperflex, I'm gonna want that. Like that's the ideal, but there are just so few like really like actual hyperflex talent that like they're hard to come by.
Yeah.
And it, dare I say, like it's almost impossible to have 2 on one team. Maybe we'll see that this season. Maybe we won't.
Everything is possible in the land of big owners and little budgets.
Sure, agreed. Yes, if there's ever a time to see some stacked rosters, 2023 is probably it. But moving on, Atlanta, jury's out on just exactly what's going on there. We have to talk about Toronto, which I wanted to talk about last week, but didn't necessarily have the time to. But Casores moving in, Hisu, Moby Dick, Twilight, Yangwon, Muse, although all out. Does this kind of much in a similar way to Atlanta, where it's like, okay, is there a culture fit here? Like, are they painting themselves in a direction? For you, does Toronto feel like they're painting themselves in a direction, moving from a Korean roster to pulling the trigger on a Western coach immediately as early as they did?
Yeah, I think Casores had a bunch of traction in the market, and that probably meant that he wanted assurances early. Of course, like once again, theoretically the roster signing window should be closed and everything should be over by now, right?
Sure.
So they kind of needed to move. I think Casores is an interesting pickup for multiple reasons. I think he's one of the more holistic coaches, possibly more so than the big ones, because he also covers, the whole like I'm about to say mind-body connection angle.
Oh.
Like
even I'm mind body pilled.
me when I go to the gym and say a big word to make it sound better. No, but I think like he's a full package. His strategy chops are of course like unquestionable. The thing is, of course, there's something to be said about authority and making authority work for you. That might be something that a head coach always has to sort of figure out, structure the team culture, keep it all calm, keep it all running. Some teams are easier than others to do this in, so we'll see. I think theoretically we have to evaluate that decision by the Defiant now, and I distinctly remember that we said like the Defiant had always had like a coaching problem. Right, it went from Bishop, to Fefe,
100% they did. Yes,
right, to KDG. Was there someone in between? Only interims people who are thrown under the bus.
No, but everybody who's been in Toronto has been basically just like pilloried and sacrificed. Like you want to talk about Washington wanting blood for the blood god? Toronto's been doing that since 2020, baby.
Right,
2019.
And yeah, the KDG situation, of course, like a coach that had a running up thing, but that teams also told me help them get agents over because they didn't want to play with KDG,
Okay.
So there was a thing there where Defiant had best intentions with their coaches, but they always got the coaches sloppy seconds after PKS and whatnot.
Yes.
And now they're getting a guy that actually, I guess Fefe, theoretically, it's not fair to say that he fits that paradigm, even though like he had the meme year of like the marketability. We're going full Western in that regard, like.
We're friends, by the way.
But then the players were mega washed by that time, right? Me when I'm Shuffle. But I think like this is a different situation. This is a guy that this is much more like face than it feels like anything else, right?
Yes, this is a shift in like who the gatekeepers are allowing in. I think that's the to kind of summarize what you're saying, right? Like every time we've seen Toronto move in the past to try to rebuild, it's always been like behind the 8 ball. This seems like they're finally ahead of it.
Yeah.
Now, what really is gonna, just from my opinion, what really is going to sell me is if the roster continues to showcase ahead of schedule or ahead of the 8 ball like attributes while also having room to grow. Right. Like that's where things like really hit the pavement for me is, yeah, you can point to coaching decisions, but the coaches always overturn, right? Like there's such high turnover with coaches that it can't necessarily just be a coaching thing. It's a selective problem, right? Like whoever is picking these whoever system is being operated is flawed. So something has to fundamentally change. And this feels, at the very least, at the outset, it feels like things are changing for Toronto. Does it not?
Yeah, no, for sure. I like, once again, maybe at the end of the day, it's all going to look like Toronto-esque. We're mids next year. Everything's like, nothing changes. The Earth is still round. Everything's going as fine, right? Like, the ice caps are still here and whatnot, right? But from this point of view, which is the only time you should evaluate this move, it sounds like a good decision that I can get behind, and I think you gotta commend the Defiant for making. I think that's the right choice for them as a franchise at this point. Do I expect them to win the league? No. Do I expect them to have a say in the tournament? Maybe, right? That's about the type of situation that the Defiant finds themselves in. And of course, like, you'd ideally want more than 50% win rate. Let's try 65. 65 would you? 65 is actually pretty good. Yeah, okay, yeah. Let's try 65. So yeah. I also will say, like, shameless plug incoming. I'm not ashamed, actually. I don't feel that.
Yeah. Come on.
Me when I'm shameless.
Me when I'm ASMR posting.
Do we have to
just just saying, it would be fire content, but if you're ashamed by it, then hey, no, by all means.
Let's see. I'll maybe that will be my tweet for how I advertise this episode. Okay, like I do this, sure. And then I go, or you could watch TCP. Okay, here's the headline. Okay, I'm workshopping. The viewer doesn't know, and especially those guys that are currently listening to the podcast on like Spotify, they have no fucking idea what's going on. But like basically, I did like a thing that I showed to Joe, which is like a satirical blah blah, like fucking idiot posting thing of roster reporting ASMR. Okay, be surprised by what it is. But here's the tweet, Joe. You ready? Your tweet is, I'm running out of content, and then this, and then after that, JK, here's the new crouch. Thoughts?
Go for it. I love it.
Okay, we're doing it.
I already said the video itself would have been hilarious and fire on Twitter, but
right, but now I'm repurposing. See, I'm learning the monetization, right? I'm figuring esports monetization. I have a meme, but I'm attaching monetary content onto it.
It's true,
right?
Oh, so our podcast is your SoundCloud, is what you're telling me.
Basically true.
Okay. Basically so he's aiming for virality,
and then
SoundCloud rapping.
This is my Twitter. For my SoundCloud, that is my day job.
True. He's double dipping.
I'm currently on screen promoting my content that I'm doing for my day job. See, it has levels. It has levels, Joe.
He's like an onion. He's like a German ogre.
The onion metaphor is very apt because as you unpeel an onion, you realize there's absolutely nothing in the middle and you've been duped. So, Casores.
Well, there's plenty in the middle. It's just all pain and suffering. But yes, Casores, continue.
I'm still looking for someone to unpeel that. Okay. Me when I'm a therapist. Casores interview. We basically talked about like what it feels like to lose a grand final. Man, that was rough. Like that, I interviewed a guy pretty much 2 weeks after losing the grand final on map 7. still, like, I think the overwhelming emotion there was they were pretty happy that they were able to bring it around, learn a bunch about the meta, and then beat the Outlaws as decisively as they did the last second time around. We had a bunch of stuff come out, like what the values are that he wants to have the team in there. I don't know, like I felt like I had a good understanding of where the roster is going from what he was telling me. Also, like, proper, but like what it's like coaching him, and like what it's like to be with the shock, and these guys are also being very agile and whatnot. And also what was most interesting to me, and maybe this is also a TCP viewer thing, he elaborated a lot on the strategy that they used in terms of, like, what we talked about, like the hiding from the Sojourn, trying to have the charge rifle charge decay, like hiding, like only having proper peak, try to get charge, but not with no surface area to Edison and that type of stuff, right? So that was very interesting to hear that was something that they actually had to teach themselves. There were cool things in there, like keywords. They had a keyword that is flipping. They came up in the middle. They came up with a keyword flip, Joe. I love it. I love it because basically what flip is in that comp, they just went in, and then Lucio, and then of course Monkey, Kiriko anyway, Genji Dash, Sojourn, and who am I missing? Reaper, of course, also very agile. Everyone on that roster is very agile, and they just flipped the point at the fight position. So they would approach, and then they would just say flip, and then they would take the good space of the map, and like play with the map advantage instead of against, right? And that was something that they figured out in terms of keywords. So still big proponent of unraveling the game through language, which is, I think, something that we definitely need to improve on.
And I mean, it's got to be even harder for a mixed roster, right? Like, not everybody speaks
that was
fluent English.
Exactly what he said, right? Like,
these are concepts I'm sure every player knows.
Yeah.
But like communicating that, like, hey, I want to, cut the map in half so that we're, on a metaphorical attack and not an actual attack. Like, it's probably pretty hard. So keywords make a great vehicle to translate ideas.
Yeah, no, like relaying really intricate concepts in the moment is just impossible through language if it has to be very complicated. Everything has to be figured out to a certain degree. Like, you can't really reinvent the wheel on the fly if you're in a hybrid roster most of the time, right? So having these set concepts was big. One of my favorite interviews I've done. And I think Casores impressed me with just the whole, like, he's the full package, right, as a coach.
Yeah, it's, he's been due for a call up. I know it's probably difficult to leave the shock, again, coming out of a grand final, coming off of, a monster and proper being under your wing. But definitely, I think Toronto's got again, they've got a good start. How they continue, that's up for them to decide. But all things considered, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. I did say that last year, though. So
me when I'm posting,
me when I'm posting for this year. So we will see. It's difficult to say. I've been a big proponent of promoting assistant coaches, and I think Casores has been long overdue. So we will have to see some little catch-all wrap-up. Obviously, if you're an audio listener, you can't see, but Ramattra has joined us as our third host. They have not much to say because they are a still image. But on November 26th, they won't be a still image. They'll be actually revealed, and some of their abilities have put out there. Any thoughts there? Excited? Do you think that we're going to start with this new tank come 2023?
I mean, considering that like pretty much every new hero has made it into a meta at some point now, it's probably a safe idea to say, yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I think the only hero that was majorly honest, actually two. I would say Bastion, of course.
Yeah.
And then Orisa, right? And
Orisa just has.
Yeah. That she probably needs another look. But yeah, I mean, if this is anything to go by, also because how cool he is, I think you kind of want to also make him work.
He seems like a big piece to like Overwatch. Like the fact that like not only did they have like that crazy statue that they're producing, this seemed like a big to do. Like even I don't know how many people are aware of this. I know the people who I went to the finals with were not. When you exited the arena after finals, they had like these little all event long. They had these like very like artsy postcards that you could get, like these little like posted cards that had like some official art on it that were genuinely really cool. I think I have it under here. These little postcards were on a table exiting the arena, and I haven't. It's been a minute since I've seen that kind of push for a hero. This seems, and it seems like even the developers themselves have talked about like how, Ramattra is how we're driving the story forward. This is the first time we're actually pushing the plot a little bit. This seems like a big deal to them, and I think it's a big. This seems like a big hero. For the overall, arcing story of Overwatch. And then we have to think about like PvE, and maybe there's a big tie in there. Who knows? Hard to say. It's too on the horizon to really give a date, but yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. I'll say that. Kind of stoked to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I think the design is pretty cool. I'm not sure how well the kid will play from what we know. Sure. We'll have to see. We already know about the the 2-tank mode. It's always a little Yankee.
Yeah.
Me when I'm at least niddly trauma posting.
Yeah.
It's a rough one to make work, but maybe it works but much better. Like I feel like you always have to play these heroes. It's really hard to get an idea how, even reading Kiriko abilities and then playing them is very different.
So different. Like when you read, even when you saw Kiriko, I don't know that it was necessarily as. I don't know if that video trends kind of how to put it, like explained how her like healing Ofuda, like the left click works necessarily, or how quickly you could heal with her, how much you could heal with it, or the range at which you can do. It is a little weird. So I think that this is going to be, especially because we already know that it is like a stance change hero, where like there are different forms to Ramattra. It is going to look like a lot, but feel like a ton. Like it's going to feel like an absolute university course in how to play the game all over again, because
I like that
character has
crazy
abilities.
I like that we're going into more complex character design.
I do too.
But I will also say, like, just on the point of like the kid reading very differently from how it plays. Do you remember what we said about Kiriko and like her headshot multiplier and how like that's very dangerous?
I still stand by this.
Yeah, but none of it now matters, right? Like everyone's like field up hilt, just like healing max, just ult.
Yeah, I think it's with time we will start to see the art of Kiriko develop a little bit, where you see like the fielder, you see like the spicy Moira, but you also start to see the Teru, right? That was somebody who I absolutely adored from Grand Finals, where like he was out there getting and making plays and providing a lot of value that wasn't necessarily just, throughput healing, right? I think there are different ways that you can play Kiriko, and it obviously depends on the comp and it depends on the meta, but I think there is more depth to be explored with Kiriko. I'll say that.
But I'm worried that, like, currently it just maximizes for ultimate, of course, right? And then you have some.
Yeah, it's too good not to.
That would have to be turned down in order for the alternative playstyle to get more attractive. I don't think they're currently, if you leave her untouched, that the damage playstyle, or like that way you go opportunistically, where you're like an opportunistic omnivore, if you want.
Sure.
I don't think that's fit or reliable. I don't think that's maybe. I feel like healing Kiriko currently as it is in the game, especially with that Kitsune, is probably already optimal play.
Yeah, I think with the way that the ult stands, like the fastest way to the ult is like just an inherent win condition for the team.
Yeah.
Which is like too good to pass up.
Yeah.
So it's hard not to, right?
Yep. Yep.
Alrighty, but yeah, new hero coming out. Not necessarily great news on the business front, but the off season turns on. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Where or what is coming down the pipeline for you, Yiska? Anything fun on the horizon?
I have some dope content that also got delayed because of this. Do I talk about this? Well, why not? I'm currently planning a general manager panel where I'll just invite a couple of general managers, discuss the off-season, the challenges that they had, what it was like, and I already got them to agree. We already had a semi-pinned date, and then everything was delayed, of course.
Yeah.
So now it's probably going to be sometime after the deadline, whenever that is. If they move it again, maybe it's before. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, right?
Alrighty.
Do you have
anything else?
Anything that?
Do I have anything? I currently am looking at some art I need to spray with this fixative, which makes it the pencil stay in place. So I need to go do that. And then I'm still churning out a project that is probably not going to pay for itself, but I'm going to do it anyways. And maybe people will care, maybe people won't. It's too early to talk about. So
sure,
we'll wait for that. But trying to stay busy, trying to hopefully try to snag some interviews. I definitely have some questions to ask. First time coaches, new GMs, all kinds of stuff. Want to see directions. We're getting deep enough into the off season that I think it's starting to be that season, let's say. And then obviously the holidays here. Hopefully partaking in that a little bit. But not too much else. Not too much. But
for sure.
Yeah.
Of course, as I realized that I hadn't pressed publish on your piece, which I'm going to do right after this episode. You wrote like on the top 5 agents, right?
Yeah, top 5 free agents. Just kind of looking at, who is like where people really should be looking at, like how you evaluate talent. Not necessarily looking at some of the rookies that are coming in, because I don't necessarily have any kind of read on that just yet. That's something that expect that to be a piece in the coming future about like the top 5 rookies, who to keep your eye on and why, that kind of thing. But as of right now, it's just looking at like restrictive or unrestricted free agents that were already or previously under contract, and who is probably the most valuable to pick up, right? The biggest free agents, the people who are going to be shaping the future of possible franchises. I think these 5 players probably do that. And it's not super crazy. I wanted to get kind of crazy with it, but I put some feelers out to the community. Shout out Discord, helping me a lot. Forgot a couple names. There's too many names on the table to try to keep them all in order. So
it's actually nuts. Yeah.
It's tough, but yeah, that's out there. And yeah, all the socials, all that stuff. This is 271. Go watch Chainsaw Man. It's great.
It is.
All that stuff. Check it out. Support the podcast. See you in Discord. If not, have fun in Audio Land.
Peace.